Hello, guys. Today we will talk about topics that rarely rise in male conversations, but which are critical for a deeper understanding of women in your life, whether your partner, mother, sister, or colleague. This is not an attempt to summarize or hang shortcuts, but rather the desire to shed light on some obvious aspects of female psychology and experience that will help you better build relationships and avoid common errors. So let's start. First, female competition exists, and it can be much more insidious than male. We men are accustomed to open competition, who is stronger, faster, more successful. Everything is usually in sight, but female competition is a different story. It is often hidden, proceeds implicitly, and can be very rigid, although it is rarely manifested in the form of direct aggression. This competition goes beyond the struggle for your attention, although this is present. It can manifest itself in social statuses, who looks better, who has more successful children, who leads a more correct life. Women can unconsciously or deliberately depreciate each other's achievements, gossip, use passive aggression or subtle manipulations to belittle a rival. Understanding this will help you not idealize women's groups and realize that sometimes innocent actions can have a hidden subtext. Not all friends are always sincere. Second, female attractiveness is a powerful but fleeting resource, and women are aware of it. From an early age, girls are taught that their beauty is their main trump card. And this is true. Attractiveness is really a powerful social tool. She can open the doors, give privileges in her career, provide increased attention, and, of course, attract you men. But this resource has a huge drawback. He is not eternal. Society, especially in the modern world, is obsessed with youth. With age, this currency begins to depreciate. For many women, this becomes a painful and deeply personal experience when they face the fading of interest in their appearance. They see how the attitude towards them changes, and this can greatly hit their self-esteem, which has been formed around their appearance for years. Therefore, women spend tremendous efforts, time, and money to maintain their attractiveness, often out of fear of losing this resource. Understand that behind this race is often not just vanity, but a deep alarm. Third, a good or comfortable woman often suffers from her own suppression. Since childhood, many women are taught to be flexible, sweet, and comfortable. This means not to argue, avoid conflicts, always make concessions, smile, even when it is bad, and put the interests of others above their own. The idea to be a sweet girl is a huge cultural layer that affects female behavior. However, this model of behavior, despite the apparent attractiveness for others, can lead to catastrophic consequences for the woman herself. She constantly suppresses her true desires, needs, opinions, and emotions to please you and the rest. As a result, she loses contact with herself, with her true feelings, accumulates resentment, frustration, and hidden aggression. This depressed energy can splash out in unexpected places. In passive aggression, sharp at first glance, flashes will lead to depression and apathy. When a woman seems too perfect, maybe she just hides a huge inner tension. Fourth, motherhood is not always only happiness and unconditional love. It is also a huge sacrifice. Society draws an idealized image of motherhood, a shining woman full of unconditional love, happy and self-realized. And, of course, this is a bright side, but there is another, much more complex truth. Motherhood can be incredibly exhausting both physically and emotionally. It is often accompanied by chronic lack of sleep, hormonal swing, postpartum depression, a feeling of loss of yourself, your freedom in the previous way of life. The woman sacrifices her career, hobby, personal time, and even body. Many women are faced with tremendous pressure to be an ideal mother, at the same time forgetting about your own needs and health. When a woman says that she is tired or hard, this is not a whim, this is a reality of a huge job and self-sacrifice. Fifth, Women can also be abusers and manipulators, and very skillful. We men have a stereotype that aggression and violence are a male prerogative and women are a weaker sex. However, this is a dangerous delusion. Women are also capable of abuse and manipulation, although they are rarely manifested in the form of physical violence. Most often, female abuse manifests itself in an emotional and psychological form. It can be constant reproaches and criticism, gaslighting, when it makes you doubt your adequacy and reality of what is happening. Emotional blackmail, for example, threats to leave or use children, total control over your actions, as well as emotional exhaustion and depreciation of your feelings and achievements. Sometimes it is the use of your weakness for manipulation. The recognition that a woman can be an abuser will help you recognize such patterns and protect yourself if you encounter. The self-esteem of many women is extremely fragile and very dependent on your opinion. Despite all the conversations about female strength and independence, the self-esteem of many women remains surprisingly fragile and vulnerable. It often turns out to be closely attached to external approval, your opinion, the attitude of the partner, the opinion of friends, likes in social networks, and even random comments. Uncertainty can push a woman into constant attempts to comply with other people's expectations, sacrifice her principles and desires for the sake of approval. This leads to chronic stress and deep dissatisfaction with oneself. For you, this means that even a seemingly insignificant criticism or inattention on your part can cause a serious blow to its self-esteem. Understand that a compliment or a simple confirmation of its significance for you can have much greater weight for her than you think. 7. The desire for ideality exhausts them to the limit and leads to burnout. A modern woman is under tremendous pressure, trying to be ideal in all areas of life. They expect to be successful in her career, but at the same time be an ideal wife, a caring and impeccable mother, slender, beautiful, well-groomed, always in a good mood and full energy. The list of requirements for it is endless. This desire for an unattainable ideal is a direct path to total burnout. Permanent race for perfection attempts to have time to meet all the requirements and expectations everywhere. They lead to chronic stress, emotional and physical fatigue, and ultimately to the loss of the joy of life, apathy, and even depression. When a woman looks tired or irritated, most often this is not a bad mood, but the result of a tremendous strain from attempts to be perfect. She rarely will allow herself to be imperfect with you in fear to disappoint. Subtitles created Demitrorzov. The ache. Many women live in constant fear of being convicted or rejected by society and you. For centuries, women have encountered a strict condemnation for any deviation from generally accepted norms. They were condemned for excessive ambitiousness, for sexuality, for the lack of children, for divorce, for aging. This deeply rooted fear of condemnation and rejection is transmitted from generation to generation and greatly affects female behavior. This fear can manifest itself in indecision, the desire to please everyone, fear of expressing their true opinion, making decisions that are contrary to the expectations of others or even your expectations. He often forces women to shrink, hide their true desires, ambitions, or even sexuality. Understanding this fear is the key to seeing why your woman sometimes behaves this way and not otherwise. This is not always a manipulation. Often this is a protective reaction to a deeply populated fear to be wrong in your eyes or the eyes of society. What do you think about this, guys? Which of these truths have responded most of all? Or maybe you noticed this in your life? Share your thoughts in the comments.